right, Jim Miller, New York Times writer, co-author of Those Guys Have All of the Fun. That's the inside world of ESPN. And he also has Live from New York, the uncensored history of Saturday Night Live, now available. Give me the similarities between ESPN and Saturday Night Live.
I think both places enjoy a healthy amount of ego and paranoia. I think if you start there, it's probably a good starting place. There's one big difference, though, just to talk about differences for a second, which is at ESPN in Bristol, as you well know, there are many layers of management, lots of suits. At Saturday Night Live, it's a dictatorship. There's only one guy. There's Lorne Michaels, and there are other people that work for Lorne and help get the show on the air, but basically it's a one-man operation.
Most important cast member from Saturday Night Live and most important on-air person at ESPN ever.
So important is the key word there because it's not best, but the most important cast member was Eddie Murphy, I believe, because he kept the show alive. Remember, Lorne, Billy Murray, John Belushi, Danny Akroyd, they all left in 1980, and Lorne didn't return until 85. And so there were some wilderness years out there, and there were some slim pickings in that cast. No offense to Charlie Rocket and the bunch, but some slim pickings. Eddie Murphy basically kept the show on the air. His genius. I mean, he was 19 when he got there. He was so smart. And
19?
Yeah.
I didn't even know that.
He's incredible.
Okay, most important person in the history of ESPN on air.
On air, I would have to say, well, it's tough. I mean, look, obviously, no joking aside, what you and KO did in the mid-'90s was a huge paradigm shift for the company. It made their blip on the radar screen huge. The fact that you guys were on the cover of TV Guide for the first time in ESPN history was huge. I would have to say, though, that, my gosh, it's tough. But I know that a lot of people have problems with him, but I think Berman, because he became the face of the network in the 80s. And I think that he was a person to look at and understand. You were on cable and you were at this place coming from Bristol, Connecticut.
And I'd agree with that. I tell people, whether you like Chris or not, his style now, you forget how good he was, how entertaining he was, and doing something different than anybody else had done at a place that was almost fraternal in nature with his audience. You know, there was a fraternity-like feel to it. You had to find it instead of now where ESPN finds you.
Well, the other thing was that ESPN always wanted those four initials to be bigger than any personality. So in a way, and that's part of what you and Keith struggled with in the mid-'90s with management, because they didn't want you getting bigger than the network.
Well, they said that we don't want another Berman.
Right, because Chris got in under the wire.
Yeah.
And once he got out, that's like getting toothpaste back in the tube trying to contain him. So he had already gone off. So I think that in part because he was so big and because he was big at a time when the executives wanted him to be big because it was bringing attention to the network, that became the case for him.
The biggest ego at Saturday Night Live on air?
Well, we were talking about stiff competition now.
Okay.
That's something that has run through the eras. I would have to say, in some ways, Chevy Chase.
That was going to be my first.
When he came back to host, not necessarily the first year, although Lord knows he was very confident during that first year. He was the only person who got to say his real name because he was hosting Weekend Update and he was already thinking about what he's going to do beyond the show. But when he came back to host, that was off the spectrum.
You know, when you look at that, everybody who's passed through there, and is Saturday Night Live still relevant?
Yes, it is. It's like a sports team. This is an easy metaphor to make because guess what? They have great championship seasons, and then all of a sudden you lose a Phil Hartman, just like you lose a player, and you think, wait a second, where are we going to get him? And then Will Ferrell comes along, and then Will Ferrell leaves, and then, wow, look at Bill Hader. He's starting to, I mean, it's like the history of Saturday Night Live looks like an EKG in terms of popularity and relevance. It has fantastic years. In 2008, when Tina Fey came back to do Sarah Palin, I mean, it was part of the American culture. Forget about just the American political process.
And you look back when the Beatles, everybody wanted them to reunite. They were going to pay them whatever they wanted. And all of a sudden, John Lennon's watching Saturday Night Live, and doesn't he call Paul, or doesn't he say, hey, why don't we just go there and perform? Is that fair assessment?
There was a rumor that they were actually going to show up. Three of them. I think one of them was out of town, but that would have been obviously great. But they knew about it. Look, it was definitely, particularly in the 70s, from 75 to 80, it was a huge part of the culture.
More interesting for you to write the ESPN book or Saturday Night Live?
I'm a huge sports fan, so ESPN was a lot of fun. I think that the difference is that when you interview somebody who's part of the SNL constellation, I think they have a much bigger impressionistic mind. So you kind of like are running up and down the field in terms of like artistry and drama and emotions and everything else. A lot of the people at ESPN, they're sports fans. They really care about their career. They're very strategic in their own branding. They're very image conscious. So it's not as freewheeling. It's not as, the SNL book does not live between the 40-yard lines. It's all over the place.
He's Jim Miller, New York Times writer, and he wrote Those Guys Have All the Fun Inside the World of ESPN, and an updated version of Live from New York, The Uncensored History of Saturday Night Live, now available. Tell me a story I don't know about Saturday Night Live.
Well, one of the things that
that shocked you.
That shocked me.
Yeah.
I guess one of the things that was particularly surprising during the research of the book was there were some times when NBC came down and clamped down pretty hard on Lorne Michaels. You have this tendency to think of Lorne Michaels as just free reign and he can do whatever he wants and there's unlimited budgets and stuff. The truth is that there were NBC executives who did not think Adam Sandler, David Spade, Norm Macdonald were funny. Lorne got under a lot of pressure, and I did a lot of research and reporting on this. There was a lot of pressure on Lorne to finally to get rid of them. And finally, in the case of Norm Macdonald in particular, he had to succumb. But Adam Sandler said to me, Jim, I still don't know. I guess I was fired, right? So it's weird. It's weird for us to think about Adam Sandler, not being wanted. But the truth is that part of the history of the show involved this is before the Comcast days, but this involved great interaction from above.
How much drugs were there with Saturday Night Live?
So this was a kind of a cool thing about doing the update for the last 12 years. Sex, drugs, and rock and roll were a healthy part of the DNA for the show for many, many years. And it turns out that this new era is, it's not to say that you can't smell things from time to time when you're walking through the offices. But, Tina Fey said to me, Jim, we're more concerned with making appointments for our personal trainers. Half of these people around here are vegan. And cast member after cast member the last 12 years said to me, I don't know if I would have been able to survive back then. I don't even know how they got the show on the air. And so you got like a whole different mindset here. These people are a bit older. They're in committed relationships, or they're married, or some of them even have children. The last thing they want to do is think about going to the blues bar at 3 a.m. after the after party. They just, so the culture has kind of changed.
Did people protect Belushi when you spoke to him?
I think that there's genuine affection. There's genuine sadness for the fact that he died at 33, same age as Chris Farley, by the way. But I think that, the story that I kept on hearing over and over again was that it was such a shock when he died because he would be able to do all sorts of things at like 10:30, 10:15, and then be on at 11:30. Buck Henry was once hosting, and John Belushi was like laid out, and it was like 5 of 11. And he said to somebody, look, we're going to have to find somebody else for that sketch. And they go, no, don't worry, he'll be fine. And he was. And it's live, so you can't fake it. It's not like they were doing pickups or something. I
ran into Dan Akroyd a couple of weeks ago in Toronto. And he was great, by the way.
He's a good guy.
Telling stories. We all came away. I had the Danettes with me, and it was one of those, nobody wanted to ask the question or questions, and we're with Sandler. And I said, is it all right if my guys ask some questions Saturday Night Live? And he goes, hey, Danny, tells Akroyd, hey, answer the question. Tell him all the good stuff. Tell him all the good stuff. And all of a sudden, Akroyd starts telling you stories. and he's going through Animal House and who was supposed to be in Animal House originally.
Right, Chevy.
Yeah, the star-studded cast there. And so I said, I heard a story, and you went down the hallway knocking out all of the the ceiling tiles because you thought that somebody had stolen your drugs. And he goes, "That's true. That's true." I said, "Okay."
Oh, yeah. Yeah. He has no, I think that's the one thing about Akroyd. He has no fear. He's totally transparent. You ask him anything, but I think his greatest moment at Belushi's funeral, obviously everybody wanted him to talk about John. He said, "A great man, but a bad boy."
Oh, that was his line?
That was the Akroyd line.
Your Mount Rushmore of Saturday Night Live talent.
I'd have to say, I still have to go with Belushi and Gilda. They were just so special, unbelievable. Phil Hartman and Will Ferrell.
Wow. I guess there's no wrong answer in that because there's so many people you could put on. Like I would have Eddie Murphy up there. That was something different. We had never seen something like that on TV.
It's true. It's true. I mean, Gilda, to me, was such a singular personality. I think it's important, that she also gave a lot of female comedians, a different look than Carol Burnett or Lucille Ball. She was doing stuff. I mean, it's like what McEnroe said once about Borg, right? We're all playing tennis. He's doing something else. I mean, when Gilda was up there, she's doing something else. But you could, you'd probably need to do a top 10 list.
Give me somebody at ESPN who's still angry at you over the book and somebody at Saturday Night Live who's still angry.
Well, everybody at ESPN loved the book. There's nobody angry.
They loved it?
Actually, there were apologies that were proffered in the wake of the book that a lot of people were not happy about issuing. So I guess that was a problem. And, so they got a little annoyed about the fact that they had to apologize. But I guess Chevy's upset about the book. Chevy is definitely...
He's a difficult guy.
He's definitely... he takes up a lot of oxygen. But, he's a unique talent. He just didn't like the way he came across.
And I told these guys, there was a time when you had to pick between Bill Murray and Chevy Chase, who you liked. And I picked Bill Murray.
Oh, yeah.
And these guys, like I said, I didn't like Fletch, and I didn't like National Lampoon. See, even now, they're just
like every time
angry.
you say it, it's like, buddy.
But I picked Bill Murray. You had to pick who was funnier, and they were leaving and doing other things, and I picked Bill Murray. Who's been greater since leaving Saturday Night Live? Bill Murray.
Okay, that doesn't mean Fletch isn't awesome or,
Okay.
the vacation movies.
I said I'd give it another run.
But in terms of what they've done since the show, it's no contest.
Yeah.
And not to mention the fact that Billy, whether it's Lost in Translation or the new movie St. Vincent's or whatever it is, he's got 360 degrees of acting chops. I don't think, with all due respect against Chevy, I don't think he could have done Lost in Translation. He couldn't have done half of the movies Billy has done since.
But if we're looking at money made, Adam Sandler is...
So I think Adam Sandler, but Mike Myers is up there too.
He's in The Billionaire.
And of course, Eddie.
And Will Ferrell probably is up there in The Billionaire Club.
And Will,
to it.
but Eddie had some big hits.
He's Jim Miller. He's done it again. And you know what? I don't know how many people you interviewed for this Saturday Night Live book, but I know you interviewed over 500 people, I think, for ESPN.
Yeah, 560.
How many people you interviewed for Saturday Night Live book?
It was over 500.
Yeah, I figured. The updated
It's an addiction.
of Jim Miller's book, Live from New York, The Uncensored History of Saturday Night Live, is now available. And, of course, those guys have all the fun inside the world of ESPN. Is there going to be a movie?
Yes.
There's going to be an ESPN
I hope so.
movie.
We're just waiting for Brad Pitt to clear schedules. He could play you.
No, I want somebody better looking than that.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yes. Jim, great to see you.
Thanks for having me.
Good luck with the book.